Hello, welcome to the 17Lands data review for Brothers War. I didn't actually do any previous reviews of this set yet. Just sort of wasn't super interested in doing those. I don't know, wasn't feeling it. So just gonna stick with this so far. I think actually the best place to start with this, I just clicked on the same tab, but the best place to start with this review today is by talking about the 17Lands user generally in this set. So we are officially back to two color sets from our brief departure in Dominaria United to a weird amalgamation of many colors. As you can see, we're back to the sort of, here's your 56% two color and everything else is kind of worse. Now some monocolor decks are better, and if you can draft them, as I have done a couple of times in this format, they are very good and draftable. They are draftable because of the number of artifacts, which is not always the case. Something to notice is that early on, the 17Lands user win rate is 55%, 55.5% here. Now, if you compare this to Dominaria's numbers, which I promise will get pulled up in a brief period of time, it's about 1% lower. And to HBG, which is the Alchemy set, it's actually 2% lower. And I believe that it is similar to SNC data. Yes, it's actually a little bit higher than SNC. And it is just about the same as Neo. So it's a little bit down from where it has been in recent sets, the last couple of sets. But it's sort of returning to the norm, right? We had a couple of sets where 17Lands users were performing especially well. I can't necessarily give any clear reasons on this. It doesn't really make a lot of, it makes a little bit of sense that in a set like DMU where the mana bases are complex, that people that are 17Lands users would be able to navigate more complex mana bases like that effectively. But, I can't tell you specifically, and it is only 1%, but it's pretty huge. It's a pretty huge sample size of users. So I think that a percentage point does really matter when you're looking at that specific number. And now to talk a little bit more about the archetypes in Brothers War, at least the two color ones, which are the main ones. Mono black, mono red, and mono green, I think, are all playable in terms of monocolored decks. I think mono blue and mono white are not really. I guess you can do mono white, but the uncommon, the cycle of those uncommons that care about the number of lands you have, the white one is not really a reason to do it. And you can see these are the ones that have been played the most in terms of those colors. Now, mono black has not done very well, but I had success with it, so. And technically it wasn't mono black. It was mono black splash a little bit of red. But anyways, into the two color decks. The best two color deck at the moment is Boros. I have played Boros a couple of times. I have been very successful with it. It is a very good deck from a two-color perspective. It's an aggressive deck. It's sort of got this sub-theme of like soldiers, because blue-white is soldiers, but blue-red is like, the white cards are really a lot of soldiers, and there are some red soldiers. There's really just the 2-drop red creature that you don't want to play in your deck, the 3/1, that is annoying. But yeah, it's pretty head and shoulders above the rest of the archetypes here, at least from a two-color perspective, and I think that checks out with my experience and my views of the set so far. So the second sort of like cluster would be Gruul at 57.6, Izzet at 57.5, and Azorius at 57.1. So those would be sort of your tier 2 decks. All very good. You'll notice again that a lot of red here. Gruul, Izzet, and Boros, 3 of the top 4 decks. The other deck is Azorius. Why is Azorius in the top 4? These are all aggressive archetypes. They're all fast archetypes. This is a format where being fast is a genuine way to win, and probably the best way to win. And as it is in most formats, except for DMU, notably, is the exception, really. There are other exceptions, but in recent memory, this is a format that is sort of more back to the norm of you need to have a 2-drop on 2. And these decks are the decks with the best 2-drops on 2 and can take advantage of having a 2-drop on 2 the best and can sort of win those extra games in that way. Gruul is sort of a combat trick, red-green sort of artifact-ish. It's sort of a weird amalgamation of things. It's the best Gruul has been in a long, long time. It is not going to be the best deck in the format. It is going to be Boros, but it is going to be playable and actually good, which has not been true in a very, very long time. So that's nice to see. So let's move to sort of that tier 3, the middle tier of decks, which I think consists of all the rest of the decks except for Simic and Orzhov. Although so I guess we'd say like Rakdos, Selesnya, Golgari are sort of in this mid tier, and then the lower tier would be Dimir, Orzhov, and Simic here. So let's stick with that middle tier of Rakdos, Selesnya, and Golgari. This is sort of the black colors tier, it looks like. So you have Golgari and Rakdos representing black. Not a lot of blue in this tier. Blue seems to sort of have high highs and low lows with the colors that it's matched up with. It seems to play really well with red and white and really poorly with black and green. And I think that has been true in my experience. I think that these decks, this sort of mid-tier of decks is sort of the weird artifact tier. I mean, Golgari is not really doing that, but Orzhov and Rakdos, I guess Orzhov's not really. Orzhov's doing this really weird thing that I'm not even sure should be in this tier either. Actually, no, it's not. I lied to myself. It's not even here. It's just Rakdos. Selesnya is artifacts, and Rakdos is artifacts, sack, and whatever. But yeah, I mean, I don't really. You'll notice that Rakdos has the most games of any of these decks. The reason for this, I think, is that a lot of the cards in this archetype are underdrafted by the populace as a whole. We'll get into some of those a little bit later. And so it sort of leads to 17Lands users who do see the data and can say, okay, well, these cards are performing very well, and that means I should draft them, and so I'm going to get into Rakdos more. That's sort of why that is, despite it not being the best deck. And it is a departure. Usually we do see the best deck being the most drafted deck, except for when it's Boros, like it is this time, because some people just don't like drafting Boros for some reason. I don't know. People don't like drafting aggressive decks, I think, is part of it too. People just don't like drafting them. People like to not draft them for some reason, and it leads to Boros being the best deck a lot because people don't like drafting it for some reason. And that's it. That's the reason. But yeah, this middle tier of decks is all fine. You can play these decks. They're not going to be terrible. I don't think any of the decks other than Simic are truly terrible. But so let's get into that bottom tier. Dimir, Orzhov, and Simic. Again, like sort of showing a little bit that black doesn't have that top end common-wise that some of the other colors do. And it sort of keeps it down here, and this 2 of the archetypes are black, 2 of the archetypes are blue. That is sort of showing you that those 2 colors are not necessarily performing as well as some people would believe that they are. Especially like Dimir. Dimir, my first deck of the format was Dimir, and it was like a really good deck, in my opinion, but I only ended up with 5 wins. It was sort of a, me not being good at the game moment situation where I just, early in the format, you don't read the cards. Sometimes you leave yourself dead on board accidentally, on purpose. Sometimes, occasionally, it was just a prank the whole time, I promise. And that deck seemed really good, but I haven't really been in that space again since. Like, I really haven't found myself wanting to draft those cards because I just don't pick blue cards highly enough, really. And that same sort of falls with Simic. I've never actually drafted Simic in this format because, like, the Gold Uncommon Battery Bearer is terrible. It's just not, it's not good. You don't want to be ramping into these large dudes, which is what some people, like, that's what people thought the format was going to be about. It ended up not really being about that at all. It's all about Unearth, and we'll see that with the card data. And you know what? Let's get into the card data. The last of the win rate data is, yeah, if you can play mono color, do it. Fantastic. You know, obviously mono red, mono green are great. They're aggressive decks. Don't play Simic ever. But the most interesting place to start, the best card in the set, is Titiana's Command. You will know why this is the case if you've played against this card or with this card and have actually been able to cast it, unlike me when I did draft it and did not get to cast it. It is very good. It's extremely strong. The last line of text at the bottom there, put 2+1/+1 counters on each creature you control, is an interesting line of text, certainly, to say the least. I haven't felt this card to be completely unbeatable, but you have to, like, if you're playing a deck that isn't aggressive, it kind of just is completely unbeatable, mostly. If you're playing, your opponent needs to be at, like, 7 or less life for you to beat this card, most of the time. And if they're not, they just kind of win. So, that's it. That's the best card. All the commands are good, you'll notice. I don't know if actually all of them are good, but this Gix's Command, the second best card, a great card as well. Obviously great. Haven't gotten the chance to play with this. Have played against it. I didn't, like, lose on the spot to it, but yeah. This card, Portal of Phyrexia, only suffers from being 9 mana. It's insane. I did have it in one of my decks. Once again, was not really ever able to cast it. My opponent cast the terrible red rare that blows up all your artifacts with mana value 3 or less against all my Power Stones, and I was planning to play this, and then I did not get to play this. It was a bit of a tough moment. That's a day one of the format situation. That will happen to you. You will lose to bad cards. It's okay. That does happen. Siege Veteran, probably the actual best rare in the set. As you'll notice, the opening hand win rate is 71.5%. That is absurd. Basically means that if you play this on turn 3, you win the game 70% of the time, and that's just ridiculous. It's really, really hard to have that level of win rate. Right? It means you're contributing to 20% win expectancy change with one card, which is really absurd. And the fact that even when you draw it late, it's still good is great. A lot of the rest of these rares, like, you'll figure it out. They're all, like, nothing really interesting to talk about here. We are going to start now with the commons in color order. So we're going to start with the white commons. Now, I believe that 17Lands has these cards, these artifact cards that unearth with the color as quote unquote white or whatever color they are, commons. I don't really see them that way, especially some of them, like this one, Scrapboard Cohort, is a white card, and it is the best white common. If you want to consider it a white common, I don't really consider it to be a white common. I basically put it in pretty much any deck. Like, it really, there's no deck that it doesn't go in. Right, so it does so many things for you. It really just it makes 2 bodies. It is a 3/1. It's a soldier. It also makes a soldier, which is nice. Part of the reason that the soldier decks, the blue-white decks, are so good is that there's a lot of these incidental things that make a bunch of soldiers, and then you always have stuff to buff with your other synergy pieces. So yeah, it's just great. Prison Sentence and then Airlift Chaplain, the true white commons, basically tied at number 1 or number 2, depending on how you classify these cards. I am an Airlift Chaplain believer. There are Airlift Chaplain doubters out there for reasons I can't figure out. I don't really understand why people don't like this card. It kind of does all the stuff you want. Like, people are like, oh, well, a 3-mana 2/2 flyer isn't good. That's true. That's correct. And that's what happens if you miss. But if you have, like, even one Scrapwork cohort in your deck and you mill that thing, and then you get to, like, draw another card with your, like, 3-mana 1/1 flyer, like, that's just incredible. And you'll say, well, white's trying to be aggressive, white's not doing this, white's not doing that. I think it just does so well. And when I've played the card in my decks, when I have played it and it has entered the battlefield, I have been happy every single time I've cast it. Sometimes it kind of like feels like it's not doing anything because it's just like a 1/1 flyer, but I think that's more of a feel thing than a results thing. I think people have like bad feelings with this card that are like, I have to build my deck a certain way. It only gets plains mana. I already have white mana. I cast this card. Why do I need more white mana? Resources are important, and I think that people need to understand that the card generates resources, and it generates a flyer, which in this set is very important, especially in white, because there is no flying in the set. There is nothing that can block flyers. This is why, in my opinion, white is actually a very good color, a very underrated color. I think that there are haters out there on white as a color in this format. You will find them all over the place. I think that the data suggests that white is actually one of the better colors to be drafting, and you really want to be avoiding blue. And there are people that disagree with this, and I'm sure that they will be very successful in their drafts. But I do want to call out that this color is an underdrafted color right now, and part of the reason for that is this card right here, Aeronaut Cavalry. We're skipping the Paratrooper a little bit. It's a 5-mana card. Yes, it's a 5-mana card, and it's supposed to be an aggressive card. You don't want it, and normally I would say, well, you don't want to load up on these. No, you can load up on these. You can have as many of these pretty much as you want. Not as maybe like 5 is like probably too many, but like 4 is fine. Like you probably should play 5. They actually work with themselves, so that's part of it. Again, as I said, no flying. There's no flying in the set. I know there's a lot of removal, but this sort of gets around removal because it's buffing another one of your creatures when it enters the battlefield. So it does have an immediate impact. It generally enables an attack. It works really well with this card. It works really well with this card. It does not work really well with Airlift Chaplain, but Airlift Chaplain is good enough on its own that it doesn't matter. It's just great. It's just really good. It just is hard to deal with. Your opponent is going to spend their removal spell. Well, I played Siege. I played Siege Veteran on 3. Well, your opponent has to answer that or they lose the game on the spot. Okay. And then you play this on 5, and they're like, well, I used my removal spell on your busted 3-drop, and now I have nothing for this 3/4 flyer that's just going to run me over for the rest of the game. And it blocks extremely well as a 3/4 when it comes down, which is nice. You don't generally want to be blocking with your flyers, but sometimes you do have to do it. It's just a great all-around card. It works well with what white wants to do. Similarly to Military Discipline, this card is great. You should be playing it. It gets picked extremely, extremely late. You can see it's 8.53. I can't imagine that this will continue, but maybe it will. I don't know. The card is fantastic. You probably don't want to play like 5 of them. You probably want to top out at about 3, but I think the first couple of these are fantastic in my decks. I have been happy to have them. So, I don't know. And then it really drops off. The rest of these commons are, nothing spectacular. There are, you will see a lot of these cards. I don't think that you should see any of these cards. Notable card that you should not ever be seeing is Power Stone Engineer. The card is just it's not good. It doesn't have the right types to be in white. It doesn't have the right stats to be in white. And it doesn't have the right ability to be in white. And so it just kind of all doesn't really work. And I don't think you ever want this card in any of your decks. Really. And maybe green-white wants it. Just so you can check to see if let's take a look to see if green-white wants it. I don't think green-white's going to want it, but maybe it will. Nope, green-white does not want it. So nobody wants it. There is no deck that wants this card. It's truly a card that just doesn't fit the color at all, and you shouldn't be prioritizing it. It's basically just a 3-mana 2/1. The Power Stone, yes, it's nice, but it has to die, and it probably doesn't die for a while. I don't know. It just isn't. This isn't very good. Disenchant is not as good as I think people thought it might be at the start of the format. It is perfectly playable, but is not something you want to take very highly. It is not a removal spell. This is a removal spell. Take this instead. All right, that's it for white. We'll move on to blue. In my opinion, the worst color, and I believe the data agrees with me that this is the worst color. Best card in blue, of course, is another unearthed artifact that is not really a blue card, but is kind of a blue card. You can play it in non-blue decks, and I think you probably should. A lot of red decks want this card too because it does sacrifice itself, and that's always good to have for those decks. Notably, the second best card is Might Stone's Animation, and this is not surprising. 4 mana, make a 4/4 draw card. And I know you're not really making the 4/4, like you have to have a thing, but just having that as an upside is a thing that can happen to you is very good. So that's where you want to be with Might Stone's Animation. And this is what you want to be doing if you're playing blue. If you're playing blue, you really want to load up on these and stuff like this, because they cheap artifacts like the cantrip artifacts and the Might Stone's Animation, that's a deck. But that's kind of all that blue does. And I think that's why blue suffers so much, in my opinion, is that is so slow and finicky that you just get run over a lot. You really just get run over a lot, and it's hard to play the color. So next we come down to Desynchronize, which is surprisingly high and gets taken surprisingly late. I don't know why this is taken so late. It is a removal spell. People hate it. I don't know. I think the card's fine. I don't think it deserves this much hate. I don't think it's like this good. I don't know if it's the third best blue common, but I mean, like, Stern Lesson is not it. Like, for all the people like me at the start of the format who looked at Stern Lesson and were like, this card's absurd, this card's nuts, this card's insane, we were wrong about that. And it's interesting, why was everybody, including myself, wrong about this card? I think part of it is that blue doesn't play especially well at instant speed. Like, the counter spells are bad. Both counter spells are very bad. And so blue doesn't really want to do playing at instant speed that much. It doesn't really matter that this is an instant, which I thought it would matter, where you could be like, oh, I'll hold this up and hold up Scatter Ray, and I'm killing it on turn 3. I'm doing everything I want. But the reality is you're doing nothing you want, because what you want to be doing is developing the board. This card does not develop the board. It just sits there. It is still blue's 4th best common, but this is not especially awe-inspiring. It's not really improving your win rate at all. It's maybe a 1% increase, which we said is significant earlier, but in the context of an individual card, it's not as significant because it's only the card, not about the sample size of players. Now, this card has surprised me when I've played against it. Machine Over Matter has been surprisingly playable. Usually these type of cards are completely unplayable. This card is very playable. You can play this card. If you're going to play blue, you probably should be playing this card. I'm not playing blue very much, so I'm not playing this card, but it does seem to be okay for my opponents. It has seemed fine. It has seemed playable. Yeah, that's about it. That's kind of the joke with this card. Yeah, I mean, the rest of blue's commons, anything notable down here that you don't want to be playing. Obviously, don't play this. Have lost to this card. It upsets me. You'll lose to everything. You will. You will lose to every card in the set at some point, probably. Scatter Ray is really the card to talk about with blue, and this is emblematic of why blue is bad, is that Scatter Ray is bad. Blue does not have cheap interaction. Doesn't. And importantly, blue does not have cheap interaction that actually removes the thing from the board, which is why this is actually so good. But why Weak Zone Substitution is actually worse than it, because it does not. There is a lot of sacrifice in this set. This doesn't help with that. There's a lot of abilities, and I know it. Whatever. So this card is very efficient at times, but at other times it's extremely inefficient, and you're spending your whole turn and whatever. The reason that blue is problematic in this set is that it doesn't really want to play at instant speed, which is kind of what it says it wants to be doing, and it does not have cheap interaction that can remove a creature permanently. That is good. Like Scatter Ray is not good. It is not good, not playable. It is a bad card. It will, I think, get taken later and later. I don't really... It appears to even be performing worse than Urza's rebuff, which I don't... that's honestly the reason for that, is like the tap for 2 target creatures mode of this is actually like the reason that this card's better, I think. Like, the counter spell ain't it, so I think it's the tap ability that actually is ending games here. I think blue is really a spells color with red. I think that's where you want to be. Like if you look at the blue-red deck, this is where you're really getting the stuff that you want. You want to be doing your spell stuff, and you want to be playing your sort of like, whatever. Now, Flight Alchemist, this card is not good normally, but in blue-red, as you can see, good. It's a good card. You should play it. Play it in blue-red. Don't play it anywhere else. Still, the other cards are still good, and the deck win rates are indicative of the fact that these cards are good. Scatter Ray is still bad. It's still bad. Impressively, it is still bad in this deck. And the other good deck is blue-white, which you will not see Might Stone's animation at 1. You will see Combat Courier return to the number 1 spot, and then Wing Commando is good in blue-white, and I agree. I think this card is good in blue-white. It benefits significantly from the Soldier synergy, and that is a very important thing for this card to be good. Otherwise, it kind of doesn't do enough. But if you have Soldier synergies, this card's perfectly playable. All right, that's it for blue. On to black, the most hyped color coming into the set. And here they are, ladies and gentlemen. Overwhelming Remorse and Moment of Defiance. No surprise to me that they're the 2 best commons by win rate, and no surprise to me that people aren't taking this card yet, and maybe never will. I don't know. Maybe they just never will. I don't understand. The card's fantastic. It's like the only reason to play black cards in your deck. But, not sure. That's not true. Overwhelming Remorse is great. It's great. Removal is great in this set. This is great removal. The exile matters a lot because of Unearth. Instant speed, probably like always 4 mana most of the time. So it's just fantastic. It's just really good. There's nothing more to say about it. Now, Gix's Caress has been dipping lately. It's sort of been falling off the face of the earth. Its win rate started out at about 60%. It is now down to 57%. Is this enough for me to give up on Gix's Caress? No. I still think this card is good. I still think this is a good card. I don't think that it's amazing, and I don't think you really ever want more than 2 of them in your deck. But I do think you want... Like, the first one I think is very good. Even in decks that are, like, more tempo-based. Like, I played one of these in a red-black sack deck that was an aggressive-ish deck. And I was happy when I had it. Like, I was always happy when I had the card. It sort of made my life easier for the most part. And next would be Disfigure. I have found Disfigure to be very good. It's just cheap interaction. It's what you want in this format. There's a lot of good cheap creatures. This prevents you from getting run over. Black does not want to get run over. That's about it. Trench Stalker is the next card up. A big surprise for me, this card is very good. I think that most decks can enable it okay enough that you should play it in most of your decks. I don't think there's really a lot of caveats with this card. It's of course good in blue-black, right? Like if we look at blue-black, but blue-black is terrible. So it's not like it's fine or whatever. And it's interesting, right? Because like blue-black it has all these cards that win at such a high rate, and yet the deck is so terrible from an overall perspective, which is very interesting. However, yeah, I mean, then we sort of get into this like mix here of like your value stuff, your Gigamole Weld stuff. Like this is like sort of a package where you want to be milling your bunch of stuff, and you can use welds to get it back. Emergency Well has been very underwhelming, I must say. There was a lot of hype about this card, and it just hasn't been that good. It just hasn't been that good. And you would think with the number of like busted rares in the set, this would be better, but it really isn't performing especially well. If you have busted rares in your deck, you probably like if you want like Wormcoil engines and stuff, like you probably want these. You probably just want them still, but they're not great. Power Stone Fracture is playable removal. It is a sack outlet if that's something you want. Thorax Demon is kind of also like that. This thing is synergy. There is a lot of synergy in this set, I will say. Part of the reason that this data is a little less reliable in this set is that compared to sets like HPG and Streets of New Capenna, there is a lot of like micro synergy stuff that happens, and like you kind of do want some things. Like I played like these Killzone Acrobats. They're normally very bad. I had a deck, my red black sack deck, where I was playing these, and they were incredible for me because I had the threaten effect, the act of treason, whatever, that makes a Power Stone, and these things just like are the way to sacrifice stuff with that. These are the way to do that. There's really not any other way to do it, and so you kind of need to have these. And I found them to just be good if you have stuff lying around, but they're again very synergistic. It's tough. So yeah, I mean, I'll conclude with black by saying that black is a very good color. It's got the best removal of any of the colors, I think, other than red. Which, let's talk about red. Red is the best color, I think, according to a lot of people, including myself. You'll notice that Scrapwork Mud is at the top of red. Not really a red card. People are like, this is the thing about Scrapwork Mud. I think you should play Scrapwork Mud in every single deck you have. I don't think you need to, you'd like to have the ability to unearth it, like, at a regular interval. Like, as long as you even have the ability to do it at all, I think you should just play the card. Like, it's just so good. Because in the late game, it comes down and it just draws you a card, basically. And you can sacrifice it and do other stuff. It's just incredible. And then you have the colored card, Excavation Explosion. Everybody knew this card was going to be insane. It's insane. It's a great card. It's the best common that is... I think that it's close with the Scrapwork cohort, but this thing I think is actually better. It goes face, notably. I have won a couple of games because it goes face. It's very good. And now we get to sort of more of this like sacrifice packagey thing that Red's doing with the Goblin Blast Runners. Goblin Blast Runner is a very good card. And it seems to be a very like universally good card here with basically a 59% win rate. But it really does require you to have synergies like this Pendragon Strongbow where you can sacrifice stuff. You need to have things to sacrifice. Now, normally you do, and so these cards are great. But I have tried to play them in decks that they don't fit in, and they're very bad if you do that. Like, they are a high ceiling, low floor card, and you do need to sort of be able to maximize that ceiling in order to really utilize them amazingly. I think that just like kind of like low key, like here's what a 1-mana like 1/2 look like. Actually, there's my uncommons for red. Like Swift Spear is just a 1-mana 1/2 with Proud. It's got a little bit of an ability, whatever. But you can see that it's actually got worse stats than the Goblin Blast Runner. However, similarly competent stats, despite mostly just being a 1/2. So there's something to be said about potentially that's just kind of good for red in this set. But yeah, red's a sacrificey whatever theme, and it's very good. Whirling Strike is a good combat trick. I think you should play it if you're aggressive. Something Rivalry has incredible stats, and I don't know. I played a deck where it was red-black sack, and this card was very good for me in that deck. Seems to perform well outside of it. I guess we can look at the decks here. Red-black. Let's see it. It's performing actually basically about the same. I'm intrigued to see where it performs in like blue-red, where you can't ever sacrifice anything. It's just kind of same across the board, like red-green. It's actually bad. It's very bad in red-green. Don't play it in red-green. And then where's the other one? Red-white. It must be very good in red-white. Yeah, it's good in red-white. So it sort of is actually, you can kind of just play it. It seems like you can just play it in your deck. Unless you're red-green, which is weird. But it seems like it's just a playable card. Sometimes you do steal an artifact with, and you have Strongbow out, and that's a good outlet. But otherwise, you do need like that to be in those black colors to be able to sacrifice stuff effectively. Noted bad cards, Raise to the Ground, don't play it. Shouldn't be playing it. Other cards, this card is not very good. In blue-red, I think it's fine, maybe. I don't know. I don't even know if it's that good in blue-red. You can take a look, I guess. Is it that good? No, it's not. It's the same. It's still bad. Don't play it. Maybe you can play it. I don't know. It doesn't seem to be good enough to justify playing. The Juggernaut is actually playable. So confirmed Mishra's Juggernaut actually is playable, which is much better than I thought it would be. Thought it would be completely unplayable, is playable, is totally fine. You can put it at the top of your curve in an aggro deck, and you will be happy with it. I have lost to it. The Unearth for 6 is a huge threat. Like, you play this on like turn 5, and it's like, man, this thing's going to be hitting. It's going to be attacking. So if that's what you're doing, you should do it. It actually is better than Blitz Automaton, which doesn't surprise me because I have played Blitz Automaton couple of times and been extremely unimpressed with it. So, yeah. And finally, the green, and not finally, I guess, but finally for the colors is green. Green with similarly bad win rates to blue, although weird. Best couple of commons are Gaia's Gift and Opportunist, and then Golem. If you're surprised by any of these, it would surprise me if you were surprised, I guess, is sort of my take on that. These were all sort of what people thought were going to be good. They're good. Bransford Prowler is a interesting synergy piece. I don't think you really want it in like red-green, but I think you probably want it everywhere else. I don't know, but like green-white is this weird deck, and same with like green-blue, where they just kind of, I don't know how they work. But yeah, this card seems to be a synergy piece that does work with those. Argothian Sprite has surprised me. It is a good card in aggressive decks. The can't be blocked by artifacts text does, in fact, actually come up quite a bit. It is annoying, so do note it. Giant Growth is fine. It is not as good of a trick as Gaia's Gift. Notable. Epic Confrontation is good removal. It's whatever. Yeah, and that's kind of it. I mean, Fog is bad. Not enough people have even played it. I'm honestly kind of proud that not enough people have played it. A lot of bad cards down here. Don't play this card. There may be people who are playing this card. Don't play it. I don't know why you're playing it. I can't understand what about this card makes you want to play it, but whatever. Notable that Rust Goliath is all the way down here. You just can't get to 10 mana fast enough. The format is not about playing big guys. As the biggest guy in the format, he does not get to be played. I'm sorry for him. This was supposed to be his format, and it's not his format. He's very sad and is kind of unplayable. So if you're doing the thing and you can like mill him into your graveyard and reanimate him, good for you. I'm not like, you can do it. You can do the thing. You can do it. Is it a good thing to be doing? No, it is not. But you can do it, and sometimes you will win games as a result of doing that thing. And you should enjoy that you can do it because it is doable. Shoot Down, notably not playable either, really. Just isn't quite enough targets. Same with Disenchant. Actually, this is worse than Disenchant because it's 4 mana. So, just doesn't have enough targets to be great in the format. All right, and then I think some colorless ones we'll look at. Evolving Wilds is very good in the set. Now, Aeronaut's Wings is interesting. This is a deck-specific card that I think you do want to play. I think actually, like, I need to play this more. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by where it's best. So we're going to take a little look through here. It's very good in Boros. It seems that that's just kind of like everything's good in Boros. Play whatever you want in Boros. I would have thought it'd be good in blue-green. Obviously, Energy Refractor is sort of a universal piece or whatever. It's fine. Don't get sucked into it being like the best card in your deck. It's not the best card in your deck ever. People will act like it's the best card in your deck sometimes. It is not. It is fine. Don't be first picking them ever. You should never first pick them. There's literally, I don't think there's like, I mean, I guess there is a pack that could be constructed to where I would first pick one, but don't do it. So, keep an eye out for Aeronaut's Wings. This card appears to be solid. Like it seems to be performing enough that you should play this sometimes and not never, which is what I would have thought you should be playing it. Yeah, so we're going to move to uncommons now. Talked a little bit about the rares earlier. Mishra's Bauble is new. But generally any of these, like Artifact-y, whatever, this card appears, like Levitating Statue, appears to be playable. I had a deck that I could have played it recently. I was like, I'm like mono red, I'm not going to play this. Self-Assembler, again, sort of like if you have the cards to draw with this, it draws your cards for 5 mana, 4/4. It's good. It's good to draw cards. But yeah, a lot of these cantrip and they do enable a bunch of other synergies, and I think you should sort of generally be playing them. I think Foundry Inspector is definitely a trap. It is 52%. That's pretty bad. Steel Exemplar is good, but only in monocolor decks. You should not be playing it unless you're monocolor ever, really. Let me see. Nothing down here. Sofa Boots bad. Don't play Sofa Boots. That's just like obvious at this point. I don't think people like don't know that. I think everybody knows that. Some people still play it anyways because they like playing it. I don't know. Unless you're doing the Platinum Angel thing. Burnished Heart is terrible. I played with this in one of my decks, and it kind of sucked when I had it, so I don't want to have it anymore in my decks. So, yeah, that's about it. We're going to continue to sort of go through these multicolor uncommons here. And this is sort of the big hurrah of the episode. Skyfisher Spider. It's insane. It's an insane card. Like, hold me back. Hold me back. The Skyfisher Spider, it's like, it's coming for you and all of your resources in this game. It's an insane card. It's a busted card. It's the best reason to be in Golgari. Yes. All of those things I just said. More of those, like, it does every single thing that you could possibly want. There's nothing else to say about it. It's insane. Be advised. Take it, put it in your decks. Third Path Iconoclast, similarly. This card, like, wheeled on day one for me a couple of times. I don't know how that was happening. It was, like, strange. I mean, it's day one moment or whatever. Like, sure. The card's also absurd. Not as absurd as the Spider, but still very good. Now, this card is interesting. The Evangelist Synthesis, these actually get really, really good if you have multiple of them in your deck. But because the format is such a 2-drop heavy, like, central format, the uncommons that are 2-drops and can just sort of come down and affect the board and just sort of be like a stabilizer, like this one, are getting a huge boost from that. And this card attacks very well as well. So this is kind of what you want to be doing if you're blue-black. The Ocean Tactician is very good. It makes blue-white much better. That's about it. I don't really have anything else to say. Similarly, like, these are sort of similar cards, the Tactician and the Philogy Vanguard, in blue-white and red-white. They both are sort of like good cards to have in your deck. By no means essential to play the deck like Spider is. Like, Spider is essential to be playing black-green, and Iconoclast is essential to be playing blue-red. You need these 3 cards if you're playing these 3 archetypes. You need to have them, basically. These you do not need, but are nice sort of to have. And same sort of applies to Junkyard Genius. And Arbalest Engineers, sort of the Power Stone makers group of cards. And then there's sort of like like there's Hero of the Dunes, which is fine. It's not great. And there's these two bad ones. Like Ocean Dissident's fine. I have seen people win with Ocean Dissident or whatever. I've seen it go off against me. I don't think it's good still. Battery Bearer is definitely really bad, so don't play that. All right, getting a little bit lengthy here. By going in a different order, I've maybe thrown myself off. I may power through and try to go through all the uncommons at every color here. Just the top three quickly before I go. So let's talk about Static Net. We've seen this card before. It's incredible. Play it. Play the card. The card's great. There's nothing else to say about it. It's great. Same with like Recruitment Officer is just a 1-mana 2/1, which in this set is, I believe it's the only 1-mana 2/1 in the set. Very aggressive. Trades with 2-drops. You kind of never really activate this ability, but like sometimes you do, but like you kind of don't ever. So whatever. If you activate the ability, fantastic. You don't need to. Yeah. Combat Thresher draws you a card when it enters the battlefield. That's all it needs to do. That's about it. There's really not a whole lot else in white that's interesting. Those three uncommons really are sort of head and shoulders above the rest of the uncommons, as you can see here. Yeah. So then we'll look at blue. Thopter Mechanic is absurdly busted. It's pretty much the best reason to be in blue, generally. And same with Zephyr Sentinel. These two uncommons really are sort of the reason to play blue, and then it completely falls off, and all the rest of them suck and whatever, and they're all bad, and there's nothing interesting to say about them. I lost to this card today. Or is it lost to this card today? I'm not mad about it. Definitely not mad about the fact that I lost to this card today. Splitting of the Power Stone might be like the worst card stats ever recorded. It has what we call reverse bomb splits, where you win at less than 60% of you win less than 40% of your games when you cast this card. Call this negative tier 1. That's how bad it is. Don't play it. And the next color is black. Ashland's Harvester, not a black card. Go for the Black's uncommons actually kind of miss a little bit. Like Gurgling Anointer is not as good as I think people thought it would be because the draw 2 archetype really isn't there, and it just kind of it doesn't do enough because a lot of times it kind of just dies and doesn't get anything back. And like sometimes you draw an extra card, but like it doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird. Corrupt is not surprising. I had a deck with 3 of these. It was very fun. It was my mono black deck. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, you should play it a lot in like other decks, but it's kind of a weird situation. Unsurprisingly, this card is not very good. Don't play it. Don't be surprised. Also, Thran Vigil, another reverse split uncommon. Red, this is where the money is made. A lot of good red uncommons. Hornstone Seeker, really good 2-drop. Giant Cindermall, really good 3-drop. Research Desk, really good 1-drop. Obliterating Bolt, excellent removal. Cliff Stomper, insane in mono red. Swift Spear is fine. So these are really the top 4. And again, like Cliff Stomper are top 5. And it does sort of fall off after Bolt, but these uncommons are just incredible. You can see the win rates here. They're just really, really good. This card, like, think about this. It basically just gives you a mana. It just gives you like it's like a Manolith on turn 2, but you also get a 2/2 mana. Like it's a menace. Why does it have menace? I don't know, because like it wants to deal damage to your opponent's face, and then that like is just the best card ever. This card's insane. This card is insane. Really, really good. I don't think there's really any traps that people would actually fall into. I think these are all pretty like. Actually, no. Yeah, Mishra's really bad. Don't play Mishra. It's very bad. Don't play it. Same with Urza's fine. It's just not incredible. And for green uncommons kind of miss. It's kind of just like Baloth and Jadecrafter. Those are the good ones, and the rest of them are kind of yeah. So like green is not really, especially where you want to be in this set. To be honest with you, like Bushwhack is not. It's fine. It's removal. This thing I think you can build around, and it's actually good. There are a lot of build arounds in the set. This is another build around. Green is full of build arounds. Green is currently overdrafted. I think these cards in green, some of them are good, but they sort of just need to be open and then whatever. So let's return to the top here. And yeah, that's it. That's sort of my overview of set so far. Really nothing interesting or unique probably to say here. Artifacts matter a lot. Red cards are good. Sacrifice is a thing. Unearth is double thumbs up in terms of how good it is. It's just like the best thing to be doing in the set. So, all right, that is it from me today. Thank you for watching. Feel free to do all the stuff other people tell you to do or don't. That's also fine.